Om Swastiastu. Om Swastiastu is a greeting in Bali. So for the last 11 days, I have been traveling in Bali. I was there for 10 days, and it was a magnificent experience. Om Swastiastu means the same thing that Namaste means. It means the divinity in me acknowledges the divinity in you. And it's their everyday greeting that they have for each other. And it really occurred to me that in Bali, that's how they live their lives, is acknowledging the divinity everywhere around them. I really loved Bali because whenever I first arrived on the plane, I noticed that there was a line of people out on the runway that were waving to us. And then whenever we left on the airplane, there was a line of people right on the runway waving to us. And I found out that it was the guys that did the luggage, and it was the engineer that checked the plane, and it was the guy that directs everything on the ground. Every single one of them, for every single flight, when the flight comes in, they all line up and they welcome everybody. And whenever they pull out and taxi, they say goodbye to everybody. It's so honoring. It's so sweet. There's a lot of things that happened in Bali that made me think about my own life and how I could be of service, how I could make my life an offering to the divine. In Bali, they study the Hindu religion. It's in Indonesia, and Indonesia is mostly Muslim. But the story goes that as the islands were being conquered, there was the Vedic priests that were actually being slaughtered and murdered, and they were all fleeing, and one made it to the island of Bali, and for some reason, they never took over the island of Bali. And so this Vedic priest, whenever he landed on the island, the people there recognized the holiness within him. And they started learning about the traditions and the customs of Hinduism. And so that's how the island became a Hindu island. Now, a lot of people believe that Hinduism is a polydeity, polytheistic. But really, the Hinduism is studying all the aspects of the divine. So each and every one of us have different aspects that we call forth in the divine, and that's what they have. They have different levels of gods and goddesses, and each and every one of them represent an aspect of the divine expressed. And so you could worship a certain aspect of the divine, and it might be Shiva, and it might be different aspects, and you call them different things, but really you're just worshiping that aspect of the divine that you want to call forth in your life. And so I found that really interesting. And another thing that I found interesting was that they have the lower deities, they have demons, the lower deities, and the upper deities, they have angels and gods, right? That they worship all of them. That every single one of them is honored equally. There seems to be a harmony, an acceptance. And what it is more of like an outpicturing of what's going on inside of us. A lot of the stories, we learned about the story of the Ramayana, and it's a story of Rama and Sita, and it's not exactly a tragedy, but it doesn't necessarily have a happy ending. It ends, and all the ends are not tied up. But isn't that how life is? The ends aren't tied up, and it's a story of, do I serve my obligation to my family, or do I serve my obligation to my spouse? Do I serve my obligation to my king, or do I serve my obligation to my friend? And we never know in life what's the right thing to do. And so we're always struggling with, where is the place that I should call forth in my life that's the right place for me to be? And that's the story of the Ramayana, and it's each and every one of our stories as well. Because life is messy. It doesn't tie up in little bows. it's difficult and it's blissful. It's challenging and it's rewarding. And yet we're all trying to make it through, and each and every one of us is seeking that thing, right? What is that thing? The thing that brings us bliss, the thing that brings us happiness. What is going to bring us the most happiness? And I believe that that's what God is here, the divine, the one, what we study here in science of mind, religious science, what we study is the thing itself. We don't really have a word for it. We call it the thing itself. I call it God. You may call it the beloved one. Another person may call it spirit, love, the universe, the quantum field. It's all the same thing. But our question is, why are we here? What are we doing? What do we want out of life? And the beautiful thing that I learned is it's really up to you. I can't tell you anything you don't already know. I can't give you anything that you don't already have within yourself. Anything I say to you that you go, aha, it was already within. In Bali, they make offerings everywhere. Every day is a sacred day. They make little baskets out of palm leaves, and then they put flowers in them. And every building, every structure, they put the offerings where they feel like it's the most blessed. It's got a really good energy. And so you're walking down the street, and there's one on the sidewalk there in front of that store. There's one on the sidewalk there in front of that store. There's one over there. There's one inside the store. Everywhere there's offerings. And I asked them, our guide, one of our guides, his name was Today. So I asked Today, it was easy to remember, today, not tomorrow. I asked Today, well, how often do you pray? What do you do? And why do you have all these offerings? And he said, well, we give thanks for the abundance that we have. So every meal that we have, we cook more than enough. So we cook enough for our family, but then we also cook more to give to the gods. And it's to recognize, I have food. I've been blessed. I have nourishment. And because I've been blessed today with food, I give an offering to the infinite one that provided it to me. So every meal, they make an offering. Now in the monkey forest, the monkeys really like the offerings. But the beauty about it is everything is kind of messy there. I was worshiping in one of the temples, and I got blessed by the priests. And while I was there and I was honoring, a rat scurried by, and we were watching this Balinesian dance where they have, it's very subtle, by the way, the Balinesian dance. They do like this, and then they wiggle their fingers. And then they move their head. And then their eyeballs. It's very subtle. It all has meaning. I have no idea what all the meanings were, but each finger has a meaning, each pose has a meaning. But it was very beautiful. And while this amazing dance was happening on stage, this dog just went on stage and was wandering around, doing its own thing. And somebody was talking to me, and she had this really beautiful insight. She said, it's funny. Nature is everywhere here. The ants are everywhere. There's in every restaurant, there's geckos on the ceiling. The dog wanders on stage in the dance. You're in the temple, and there's, rats running back and forth. And we went to the bat cave temple, and there are bats flying around everywhere. And, there was a lot of nature. And everybody seemed to be in harmony with it. And there was kind of a recognition that sometimes in our lives, we try and keep the nature out. Even in our bodies, our natural ways of being, we try and keep it out. We want to live in a sterile life, right? We want to be sterile, clean. Everything is perfect and neat. Everything is in its place as it should be. Well, in Bali, it's not like that. You just gotta go with it. You can't be in that state of it should be like this. I have to do it like this, because you can't. Everything's a part of the joy of life. In the monkey forest I was walking on, and they have these monkeys. Are wild monkeys, but you can feed them with bananas. You can buy bananas to feed them, and they're well fed, trust me. But one of them, like the lady in front of me, the lady had a bunch of bananas, and she was like very delicately like feeding them one at a time. Well, she didn't realize that there was a family of monkeys above her, and one of them jumped on her back, stole the thing out of her hand, and then ran off. But doesn't that happen to us sometimes? You have an intention, I'm giving you this wonderful thing, and then a monkey jumps on your back, like something unexpected comes up. And then it's like, well, why me? Why did this happen? Why does this thing always happen to me, right? But maybe it's that we're not accepting the flow of life. We want to keep everything out, the nature. We want to keep it out, the ants, right? The demons. We want to keep it all out. Instead of having a day where someday you just don't feel well. Sometimes, personally, I have to remember that too. I have to remember, you know what? I don't feel well. Instead of making myself wrong or bad or not right for not feeling well, instead, I get the opportunity to say, I love myself. This is my opportunity to take care of myself. This is my opportunity to acknowledge the temple that I have and to recognize it's a little off balance right now. Maybe I need to pay attention. Maybe I just need to be with me and love me. There's a quote from the Bhagavad Gita that says, at the beginning, mankind and the obligation of selfless service were created together. And I wonder about honoring and serving ourselves. Sometimes we don't do that. We don't honor and serve ourselves. Do we ever make an offering to ourselves? An offering of honoring? And if you are really good at serving yourself, that's a really good time to go and spread the good news that you are. I watched this movie on the way going to Bali and on the way back, just because I liked it so much. It was called Hector and the Pursuit of Happiness. Now, if you haven't seen it, I'm going to give most of it away, but it's worth seeing anyway, I'll tell you that. Now, Hector was very neat and tidy. He was a psychiatrist. And he was scared of dying, so he never really lived. And he was having a very plain, ordinary life. His girlfriend took care of him. She made him coffee every day and his little shot of wheatgrass every day and put the tie around him every day. And everything was labeled in boxes. Everything was perfect. All the drawers, pulled out, they were labeled what they were. Everything in his life was neat and tidy. But he found out in his practice that it was very ordinary. He was asking the right questions. He was doing the right thing, but something was missing. It was missing for him, and it was also missing for all of his clients. But he couldn't tell them what it was because he didn't have it himself. And he felt very disturbed. He felt very, what I would call divine discontent. Have you had divine discontent in your life? Like something is brewing and it feels uncomfortable, but I don't know what the heck it is, right? It's kind of like an urging to be something greater, an urging to do something more. And so he told his girlfriend, I have to go. I have to get away from all of this. She said, where are you going? And he said, I don't know. So he decides to go off on an adventure. And as he's flying in first class to his first adventure in China. And on the way, he meets a wealthy man. So a wealthy man is in first class with him, and the first impression he gets of this man is he tries the champagne in first class, and he says, "Oh, this is not first class champagne. I want the first class champagne." And he was a really grumpy banker, right? And so the first thing he thought was, making comparisons can make you unhappy. So Hector's point of going on this journey was to find happiness. He was doing a research project. What is it that makes people happy? Why? Why are some people happy and not others? What is it? And so that was his first insight. Making comparisons can make you unhappy. Well, this wealthy banker decides to show him what happiness really is, and he gives him what money can buy. He decides to show him China, the real China, where the wealth and the abundance and the women, he shows him it all. And Hector thinks he's really happy until he realizes that part of his experience was all paid for. It was a facade. It wasn't really the truth of what was going on. And he said, so sometimes happiness comes from not knowing the whole story. Because he was happy. When he found out the real story, then he wasn't happy anymore. And then he goes on a plane trip. And he's going to Africa. And he meets this beautiful woman. And the woman talks to him about people. And by the way, he's in the cargo of the plane. So the lady says, first class, corporate class, economy class, cargo. And he's like, I don't care. I'm going to go anyway. And he meets this amazing woman who talks to him and gives him some really good advice. She talks about people. And she says, I always think in my life, does this person predominantly A, bring me up, or B, bring me down? And I hang around with people who bring me up. And later, he gets kidnapped and tortured. And he's really unhappy. And he thinks about, wow, really, what in life? Why am I even alive? All of these things that I've done in life. He's on the cell of a floor. He hasn't been fed or anything for who knows how long. And he just keeps thinking, what is it? Why have I not lived my life? I threw my whole life away. I kept doing the same thing every day. I didn't dance when I had the opportunity to dance. I didn't laugh when I had the opportunity to laugh. I didn't do all these things when I had the opportunity to do all these things. And somehow, he manages to get out of this situation. And in that moment of freedom, he has pure elation. And he said, happiness is being alive. Happiness is not being afraid to die. Happiness is living life and doing the things you're afraid to do because you want to be alive. And I really like this story. Interestingly enough, it ties into this whole thing about Bali. Because he realized that life is messy. It's not sterile. Life is juicy and filled with joy. And so, I ask you, are you afraid to live? What are you doing in your life that you've been afraid, what you've not been doing in your life that you've been afraid to do? I went to Bali, I had a week and a half notice. I had an opportunity to go, and to me it was outrageous. I thought it wouldn't be possible. I was told of this opportunity, and I thought, well, I don't know. That's like in a week and a half. I have all these obligations at the center. I don't know if I could do it. And everything that I thought of that could be an obstacle, I realized it was self-imposed. I even had money as an obstacle, and I thought, oh, this is going to be too much money. And the opportunity was presented to me one day, and the next day, literally the next day, I'd loaned some money to somebody. And the next day, they'd paid me back the $2,500 I'd loaned them. And I thought, I think I'm going to Bali. Why not just do it, right? And so I encourage you to find something in your life that you're afraid to do and do it. What? Oh, well, so I was there, I was with my wife and my wife Gina, and I said, well, I don't want to be away from you so long because I'll be away a week and then in Albuquerque, and then I'll come back, and 2 days later I'm going to go to Bali, and then I'm going to be gone for 11 days. And she said, if I'm the only reason holding you back, then you better go. And I was like, okay. Oh, the money thing? No, I don't remember.
If you didn't do it, and then later on we didn't have the money to do it.
Oh, that's right. That's right. She said, if you do it now, and you're going to really love it. But if you don't do it now, and we don't have the money later to do it, then you're going to regret it. It's true. And if I'm rich, I could do it, but if I didn't do it, then I'd still regret that I didn't do it. So you got to make sure, if you really want to do it, just do it. Just do it.
Sounds like you married well.
I did. I did. So I ask you, what is the one thing you wanted to do but held back? Are you willing to make an offering of yourself to your world and to your community? Maybe you can step into service, which is our theme this month, which is an act of helpful activity. Aid is to do somebody some service. So I encourage you this week to think about those three things. One thing that you're afraid of doing to do. Make an offering of yourself and do an act of service. Because when you do, you treat each and every person like they are the divine. Like the people on the runway, waving to me as if I'm somebody important. Because I am. And each one of you are. So I encourage you to see everybody that you meet as the divine. I honor you. I honor the divinity in you. And thank you for this beautiful day. Namaste. Let's pray. Oh, Divine One, Maker of all that is wonderful and joyful and juicy, Creator of the light and the dark. I acknowledge that stars couldn't shine without the darkness. And so I know that as I am a part of this infinite beauty, this grateful dance of life, that the infinite one is here present in me. The thing that knows how to create flowers and joy, the thing that knows how to create rivers and mountains, the things that knows how to create my life in a way that I can't even imagine, is here present in me and each and every person. There is a divinity that is co-creating, that is expressing itself, that is moving and shaping itself. Alive, vibrant. And I recognize that it is in my life. And so I surrender to something bigger. I surrender to the messiness, and I allow it to move me in a way where I can surrender my attachments, my box, my need for sterility and comfort. I open myself up to being uncomfortable, into stretching my boundaries, into growing into new ways and new avenues so that I can experience bliss and joy in ways that I could have never imagined. I welcome this into my life. And as I do this for me, I do this for each and every person here, knowing that as I feel the divine discontent, it is truly a stirring of something greater, of more magnificent, of more brilliance than I could ever imagine. The true happiness is boiling over. overflowing. And I say, thank you, God. Thank you for this joy, for this vibrancy of life. I welcome it into my life. I welcome it into each and every person's life. And I know that it continues to get better and better and better. And so I am humbled and honored and grateful to be a part of this beautiful dance, knowing that it is divine for me, divine for each of us, divine for we. And I just say, thank you, God. And so it is.